Well, our recipe that we're doing today is called wild game roll-ups, and wild game kind of an all-encompassing term because you can use this recipe for so many different types of game. Now today we're using pheasant and using the breast out of the pheasant, and I've let it marinate overnight in olive oil and had already cut it in about the size pieces that we need. But this works great with sandhill crane and with any venison, elk, especially with tenderloin if you really want to have those be good. But you basically can just take a piece of meat. Let me get these bags open so that we can get to all the pieces. And depending on the size of your peppers, this is jalapeno pepper. I also have poblanos, much milder pepper if you want to use something like that. But you can lay the meat in there, and if I can find another small piece, nope, that's probably going to be it. And then put a slice of onion on the other side. And then you want to use thin bacon to wrap around that's going to hold all of this together. And depending on how long the strips are, I went ahead and cut these in half and probably should have left them whole. But you can wrap these around and can use toothpicks if you need to, but you should be able to have the seam side down of the bacon and put that down and put it either on a baking sheet if you're doing these in your oven at home or outdoors in a Dutch oven. So I'll just go ahead and lay some more of the peppers and the onions out. And we'll do a combination with the poblanos. So there's not any even extra seasoning added with these because you're going to definitely get enough from the pepper and the onion. A lot of times I will even fix these without the onion because I can't eat the onion that much anymore. So, and then once we've got all of these prepared, we will bake these until the bacon is done, because by the time the bacon that you can tell that it's done, the pheasant will be done as well. Now the poblanos that I got are just big enough. I could probably, the strips that I'd cut, go ahead and cut those in half. Again, lay the meat on, a piece of onion, and then wrap it with the bacon. And you just can keep doing that until you get all of the meat used and all of the bacon, and you'll have wonderful, these make a great hors d'oeuvre. You can serve them with different sauces. There's a couple of sauce recipes that go really well with this, but just even spicy mustard is great to use with this. So we ran out of bacon, had more meat than I realized, but we still had some pepper and some onion, so we're going to be able to still cook the rest of the meat. And I'll have peppers and onions in underneath to keep it hopefully from sticking. And it's marinated in enough olive oil, I would think that that will help keep it from sticking as well. So now we've got all of this in on the 14-inch Dutch oven. And again, the formula for how many coals to use when you're baking anything, you want to double the size of the diameter of your oven and have more coals on top than underneath. So you have 3 more coals on top than you do underneath. So we'll be getting this on the fire here in just a minute. Okay, now our coals for these wild game roll-ups have actually burned smaller than what's ideal. So normal full-size coals we would have, for a 14-inch oven, we would have 11 underneath the oven and 17 on top. But with these being so small, we're going to just group them together, and that way we can go ahead and have the oven be heating up. And actual cooking won't start though until we get fresh hot coals in underneath this. But utilize what coals you've got to let the process get started, and we've started another chimney of coals before it'll actually get to cook. So then we'll put the oven down over those coals. Check to see if I got the spacing right. If when you go to set the oven down, you can tell it's not setting level, that means one of the legs is hitting some of the coals, and you can just kind of shuffle it and then look around the oven and make sure that you've got coals just in under the edge all the way around. Baking especially, you don't really need heat in the middle underneath the oven as much as you want to make sure your coals are evenly spaced underneath, so you don't have a hot spot and have an area that will get burned even when you're trying to turn the oven. So as soon as these coals are of a usable heat, we'll add those to the top, more underneath, and then we'll know to really start counting our cooking time, or observing when the bacon is done, that the rest of this is probably going to be about 10 to 15 minutes, and but it'll feel longer than that since we're not starting with full coals. Now it's good to remember when you're baking that there's, I don't know who figured out this formula, but I'm sure glad that they did, that you can double the diameter of your oven. So that this being a 14-inch oven, we need 28 pieces of charcoal to get to about 350 degrees. But heat rises, so you want less coals, less heat under the oven than you do on top, so that you aren't burning whatever you're cooking. And when we're using this formula for coals, it's for a full, freshly lit briquette, not a partial one like that little one is, or if they've burned longer than they should have to give you the most heat. So I should have 17 on top. I can go ahead and add a couple of extra on either side, and again, you want spacing of the coals even on top of the oven to be evenly spaced so you don't get a hot spot and have something get too brown. And because I know our coals underneath weren't at full heat, I'm going to set this off long enough to add more coals in underneath, and again space them evenly around. We won't necessarily even count that one, and then see if we can't find some others back in this chimney that are lit to get to our 11 that we need underneath. And there's little enough heat, again there'd be enough heat that you'd get burned, but little enough heat to actually help with the cooking that I'm not going to worry with moving these partially burned coals out of the way. And then again, once you've got your coals in place, to remember that about every 3 to 5 minutes when you're baking, that you'll want to pick your oven up, give it about a quarter turn, set it back in place, and you could see that time that that one settled where it started out sitting on one of the briquettes, but then the briquette moved. And so from this point we can start figuring in about 5 or 10 minutes that we'll, or 10 minutes, and we'll check and see how the cooking is going on these. Now again, with baking, it's good to get in the habit of giving your oven about every 3 to 5 minutes, about a quarter turn, and then set it back down. You'll want to look in under the oven, because it's possible you might have messed up the arrangement of your coals underneath, and you don't want to create a hot spot after you've worked so hard to not have any of those, and adjust your coals as needed. But for us here in Oklahoma, we can plan on that there's always going to be at least a slight breeze, if not a gale. And whatever side that the wind is coming from can keep that side of an oven cooler. And so by rotating it, you're evening out the heat all the way around with your oven, and things will bake much more even that way. Oh, wow, they sure look good. And probably another 5 minutes and we'd be done. We'll turn some of them over. They look like they're cooking evenly as they are. But we'll, especially the meat that we added that didn't get rolled up with the bacon, but since we ran out of bacon, I'll flip that over to make sure that it is all getting cooked. And depending on how crisp you like your bacon, a lot of people would consider these to be done even right now. Let them cook just a little bit more. It's probably the moisture from the onions. We've had a lot of liquid cookout of these, which is probably why they might not have browned as much as they would have otherwise. As they say on a lot of cooking shows, we wish you could smell this, because it does smell good. Now, in case I hadn't mentioned earlier, besides baking these in the oven at home, typically when we do these at home, we actually cook them on the grill. And because of the fat in the bacon, you want to be careful about getting flare-ups, as that bacon fat would drip onto your either gas grill or on coals. You don't want these to get burned, so you might actually still want to lay them on a sheet of foil so that you don't get those flare-ups and have the roll-ups get burned if you are cooking them on the grill. So just a few more minutes and these will be done. There we go. So the wild game roll-ups, this time made with pheasant. The bacon has browned very nicely, and these are definitely ready to be able to serve. So we'll plate some of these up. They're still going to be hot, but they're also going to be good. Well, I hope with this recipe that you've learned even more about the versatility of Dutch ovens and how fun they can be to cook in, not only for traditional dishes, but wild game dishes especially too. If you enjoy already being in the outdoors anyway because you hunt and fish or like to hike and camp, take along a Dutch oven and enjoy your meals in the outdoor as well.